Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in Iqaluit, where a fire destroyed an apartment building. The government of Nunavut says 36 families have lost their homes, and it's prompted the Canadian Red Cross to come in to help. The CBC's Mahnor Mubarak has our top story.
The fire at Noble House, or 1088 Mivik Street, caused the entire building to collapse early Thursday morning. Cherise Porter says she lost everything in the flames. She came back home from work last night and saw her building engulfed in smoke.
Emotionally right now, I think I'm a bit numb. I think I'm just trying to lean on the positive side that we're alive and the community has wrapped us around with support.
The city of Iqaluit has opened up a warming shelter at the Cadet Hall. They're taking in donations there for those displaced by the fire. People have been donating items such as clothing and food where people affected by the fire can pick them up. Volunteers are also working to drop off items directly to victims. Amber Aglukak has been helping out with the relief efforts. She says hundreds of items have been donated and people who lost their homes are grateful.
They're breaking down the moment they walk into the Cadet Hall and seeing how much stuff is available to them. And their reaction is impacting not just myself, but everyone who's been here to help in such a deep way, knowing that the community support is there.
Nick Clark is the VP of Infrastructure for Nunavut Housing Corporation. It owns some of the units that burned down.
We have 26 people in hotels, and we're still working trying to reach some of the other impacted tenants. It's not clear as some of them could have been out of town. We haven't offered any financial support other than we've gotten gift cards so that there's a short-term solution. We're in contact with the Red Cross, who has offered some support as well.
CBC News has requested more information on the total number of units burned down from the building's owner, Northview REIT. The Iqaluit Fire Department are investigating the fire with support from Iqaluit RCMP and the Nunavut Fire Marshal's Office. Mahnor Mubarak, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The government of Nunavut says there is support for people affected by the fire. If you've lost your home in the fire and you need housing or shelter, you can call the emergency contact line. That number is at the top of your screen. If you need emergency income assistance, you can go to the Income Assistance Office in Iqaluit or call the number there on your screen. There's also mental health support available. You can talk to a counselor at 867-975-5900. And if you've lost ID or a driver's license in the fire, you can visit the motor vehicle office for a temporary document. While residents are seeking shelter after the Iqaluit fire, a business owner is already looking to rebuild. Ernestine Nila is the owner of Mac African Market. She started her business about a year ago, but now it's gone. Nila says opening the store was a dream come true. She put time, money, and work into providing African food to community members.
I felt very sad, as if I've failed my people again and community members, because that was the only place where they can actually buy African food. So I felt very bad. I was there, I watched the building going down. I felt terrible.
Nila says she's not quite ready to give up on her dream. She's already looking for a new place and wants to reopen in a new location as soon as possible. A Nunavut man has been sentenced to over 4 years in prison for a manslaughter conviction in Yellowknife. Justice Louise Charbonneau delivered her sentencing decision in the Northwest Territories Supreme Court today. Darren Nuliayuk was convicted of killing Adam Kakolak in a Yellowknife hotel parking lot in July of 2023. The CBC's Nadir Hashmi has the details of the verdict.
Charbonneau sentenced Darren Nuliayuk to just over 4 years at the Northreef Correctional Center. In her judgment, Charbonneau told the victim's family that no sentence can truly bring justice to their loss, but that restraint is also important in sentencing in such cases. Charbonneau says she also took into account Nuliayuk's difficult childhood. She said at just 20 years of age, he has been exposed to tragedies, but it is also evident that Nuliayuk has a problematic relationship with alcohol, and under wrong conditions, he can become violent. For example, at the time of the incident when Kakolak was vulnerable and unprovoking. Hence, Nooly Ayuk does present a degree of risk to the public. Charbonnet says she agrees with the defense that the Crown's recommendations of 6 to 7 years is excessive, but 2 years suggested by the defense falls short as well. Charbonnet says the 4-year sentence will give time for Nooly Ayuk's rehabilitation, which she says is the best way to protect the public. Since Nooly Ayuk has already spent time in custody, the judge said he has around 2 years of sentence left. The release will be followed by a 3-year probation with several conditions, one of which is abstaining from alcohol and illegal drugs. After the verdict, Crown Prosecutor Alex Godfrey told CBC that he hopes the family can move past this troubled time. We also have a correction to make to the story that aired on yesterday's 6 p.m. newscast. It said Nooly Ayuk had kicked Kakalak in the head repeatedly, but the court actually heard Nooly Ayuk kicked Kakalak in the head only once. We sincerely regret this error. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The RCMP will reconsider its decision to keep silent on whether it investigated 2 NWT officers accused of using force. It all stems from a 2020 incident. Natalie Pressman explains.
When a public institution investigates its employee, does it have to tell us? That's the question at the heart of a dispute between a lawyer and the RCMP. Let's break it all down from the beginning. In 2020, 2 NWT RCMP officers were accused of assaulting a Cleachaw woman at the Yellowknife detachment. They were charged with assaults, but then a couple days into the trial, the Crown prosecutor stayed the charges. He said there wasn't a reasonable prospect of conviction. After that, a group that advocates for improvements in policing wanted to know if there was an internal investigation into the actions of the officers.
Whenever a police officer uses force, that's a matter of public interest. Yeah. And I would think that would be obvious to most Canadians.
Engel asked years ago whether there would be an internal investigation, but the former RCMP commissioner said it was a private matter and that RCMP couldn't disclose that information. But Engel says that's not right.
So I'm not saying that we're looking for a particular outcome of an investigation. We just want to know, was there an investigation?
He brought it to the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, an agency that looks into complaints into the RCMP, and they agreed with Engel. And now the new commissioner says he'll reconsider. There's no timeline on when the commissioner needs to make his decision by. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The father of a young woman who died on Boxing Day in Iqaluit has a warning to other parents. Be vigilant about your children's safety. Samuel Watt tells us the story of 20-year-old Elisipi Nooly Ayuk.
Every morning, Kingwatsiak and Elisipi would spend some father and daughter time together at the dining table.
I always make her breakfast because the brothers like to sleep in.
But never did he think Christmas 2024 would be the last time they would do that. He said she was at a party that night. The next morning, his daughter wasn't there. Later that day, the police knocked on his door with the news that would change his life forever.
I just started reliving what my daughter went through all through the night.
The autopsy report is still yet to come. RCMP say they responded to reports of an unresponsive woman on Boxing Day. She was taken to hospital and declared dead shortly after. The coroner's office and the Major Crimes Unit are looking into what they're calling a sudden death. RCMP aren't commenting further, including about any charges, while the investigation is ongoing.
And my anger is still there so much that I ended up setting up a meeting with our Premier, Minister of Justice, Minister of Health, and Minister of Women's Rights and Protections.
He told them about how Elisipi waited 3 months for alcohol addictions treatment, and she died waiting. He also raised concerns about the safety of women and girls in the territory.
Who did this to my baby? I don't want anybody else ever to experience this.
In a statement to CBC News, Justice Minister David Ahiaguk says he's taking those concerns very seriously. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
And our thanks to Sam for telling the story of 20-year-old Elisipi Nooly Ayuk. For the most part, newcomers say they're having a positive experience in Canada, but they also report facing unique challenges when it comes to housing. Alexander Silberman looks at the issue as part of a series called Welcome to Canada about immigration through the eyes of newcomers.
They have visitor parking.
Vineet and Diksha Jain arrived in Saskatoon from India last year with high hopes for a better life and began searching for a home.
This looks like really spacious.
Yeah, it's spacious
For now,
plus compact.
They saw rising rents, but being new to Canada was the biggest obstacle. With no credit history, references, or jobs, landlords kept saying no.
I was feeling like we should give up and maybe we should go back to our home country.
The long hunt for stable housing held up their path to getting settled in Canada and focusing on finding work in their fields. After 6 months of renting a room, they eventually found a place of their own.
There was always a tension back of our mind that we need to get into some good and bigger accommodation so that we can prioritize and plan our future.
The Jains are among many newcomers to Canada reporting challenges finding housing. In a survey conducted for CBC News, 8 in 10 newcomers say they've had a positive experience settling in Canada, but just more than half say they found a home that is affordable. The cost of rentals continues to grow across Canada, with most units still too expensive for the average renter. The country is rapidly building new apartments like these ones, and that's helping affordability with a record number of new rentals this year. But housing policy experts say construction is still lagging behind demand.
Supply just can't respond quickly enough.
This researcher says an influx of international students and temporary foreign workers created a rapid surge in demand for rentals.
People can get on a plane anywhere in the world this morning and arrive tonight. But we can't get a house on a production line this morning and have it ready for tonight. It takes us 5 or 6 years to get a housing built.
Others say it's a matter of too little housing and argue Canada can't afford to scale back immigration.
But simply saying that we're going to slow the population and therefore solve all of our problems, I think is actually very short-sighted and distracts us from the work that we need to do.
Welcome to our new home, Diksha.
The Jains are glad to finally have a place of their own, but they worry for other newcomers arriving in Canada and say some landlords and scammers are taking advantage of their situations. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
The Kanwipita National Inuit Health Survey team is going to every community in Nunavut, speaking to Inuit about their health and wellness. And every answer will help us as Inuit determine our own priorities for a healthier future. Together, we will answer the question, Kanwipita, how are we? Find out when we're coming to your community. Learn more at qnihs.ca.
Being there means being here. Russian forces, they want it badly.
It's just a fraction of the mess here in Port aux Basques.
To witness, to listen, to share.
I'm so
I do worry about them.
Adrian Arsenault reports on CBC News, stream free.
We're often drawn to people who have something we want in ourselves.
But it doesn't mean living like you're running out of time. It means living in a place of hope.
Indigenous leaders around the circumpolar world are bracing for the next Trump administration. The inauguration of the United States president is now 11 days away. Cheryl Kawaja brings us some of the concerns from across the Arctic.
While it may appear serene in Whitehorse, for youth activist Carissa Waugh and her peers, there's underlying anxiety with less than 2 weeks until Donald Trump's inauguration.
A lot of uneasiness and it's like disbelief. For myself, I am a young Indigenous woman and I do a lot of work in climate action, and Trump is very anti all of that.
That worry of what's to come is rippling across the circumpolar world. Threats this week from the incoming president of not shying away from economic or military force in Greenland. Former Greenlandic Prime Minister and the former commissioner of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, Kupik Kleist, says the Danish reaction has been too cautious.
He should be replied with the same force. We must remember that he is very powerful. It's not something which which you can be amused about. These threats must be taken very seriously.
And he says Trump has stirred up division over self-rule in Greenland.
I think the Danish politicians are divided. One side claiming that it is the fault of the Danish government because they allowed Greenland to develop this independence, and the other side defending it.
In the Western Arctic, the Gwich'in Nation is holding its breath as the incoming president looks north and says, drill, baby, drill. Trump wants to see development in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the calving ground of the porcupine caribou herd, the heart of the Gwich'in culture. In Old Crow, there's worry.
There are uncertain times before us, and it's unpredictable. It is so unpredictable, and you just have to be ready to react right to the situation, and it is something we think about all the time.
I think that the sensitivity to which the Biden administration, the Trudeau government, and also Greenland and others have paid to respecting Indigenous rights holders as absolutely key figures in setting agendas for the North American Arctic, that some of this may fall to the wayside. And if Trump's bullying vis-a-vis Greenland in the last few days is any indication, there's no respect or awareness of Indigenous rights or respect for the central place of Indigenous peoples to determine futures in a self-determining way.
But for now, Indigenous leaders wait to see exactly what Trump will do once in office and hold on to hope.
The whole Trump situation, I feel like, is firing us up as well. You know, like we're thinking, what can we do? What can we say?
The new American administration will be sworn in January 20th. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
You just heard Cheryl talk about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and potential development in that area. There was just an oil and gas lease sale for that refuge, and there wasn't a single bid submitted. A Trump-era law from 2017 allowed for the sale of leases for oil and gas development in the area. But with no takers, Gwich'in are breathing a sigh of relief for now. The area is home to the calving grounds of the porcupine caribou, a central part of Gwich'in culture. This is the second auction in 4 years that failed to draw bids by any company, something the Yuvuntut Gwich'in in Old Crow see as a glimmer of hope. But leaders in the community say they're ready to respond to anything done by incoming U.S. President Donald Trump, who says drilling in the refuge is a top priority. The NWT Court of Appeal is siding with Colville Lake on its interpretation of caribou management. On Tuesday, the court dismissed a legal challenge by the Northwest Territories government on that interpretation. This is just the latest in a years-long legal dispute over caribou conservation. The CBC's Luke Carroll has more.
This legal battle essentially comes down to whether traditional knowledge can be used as a viable conservation plan. The NWT Court of Appeal says it can. The NWT government's legal challenge of Colville Lake's conservation management plan was centered around the tag and quota system, known as the total allowable harvest. This is a rule that limits harvesters to a certain percentage of the caribou population. So for Colville Lake, since 2008, harvesters can only hunt 4% of the herd annually. But in 2019, Colville Lake submitted a different plan to the Sawtooth Renewable Resource Board. It was based on cultural and traditional values. The Sawtooth Renewable Resource Board accepted it, but the NWT Environment and Renewable Resource Minister at the time did not. This led to years of legal battles between Colville Lake and the NWT government. The battles ended on Tuesday when an appeal court ruled that the total allowable harvest isn't the only option for managing caribou. This means Colville Lake can submit its own management plan.
Dana Ways has always kept us. It's always kept us going. A lot of the things that we did was, making sure that everything was always provided for the future, the next generation.
CBC News reached out to the current NWT Environment Minister, Jay McDonald, about the decision. In an emailed statement, he said he is reviewing its implications with the department and will do so before determining any next steps. Now, ultimately, Colville Lake's management plan would still need to be accepted by the Sawtooth Renewable Resources Board and the NWT Environment Minister. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
In northern Labrador, Inuit are on the front line in the fight against climate change. Yesterday, we showed you how more than a dozen youth got to see the changes firsthand as part of a science camp. The CBC's Heidi Adder has part 2 of that story tonight.
To track the contaminants, the youth head into the lab. Here, researchers are watching plastics, microplastics, methylmercury, PFAs, and more.
There's always new and emerging contaminants coming up to the north. So having a good understanding of all of this gives us better information to make a better informed decision.
I love it. Science has always been my thing. So seeing all this, it feels amazing.
Liz Biogi and Amber Gleason are passing around some of the tiniest of animals, plankton.
We just catch plankton. And what is plankton? The first time I seen plankton, it was like this. And I thought it was like anak, poo.
Baby poo.
Baby poo.
The tiny animals are the start of how contaminants enter into the food web. Understand how they're doing, and it's possible to look at how it accumulates in fish and birds. Often, though, these chemicals need to be separated from the water.
The water is very important because it holds a lot of the animals that we like to eat too as well. It is a roadway in the winter and in the summertime. It is very important, whether it is in the water form or if it's frozen. It's very important to us.
The water is changing. The ice is changing. It's sometimes softer and sometimes harder than before. It's forming later in the fall and leaving earlier in the spring. Environment and Climate Change Canada says since 2021, the Labrador Sea has been the warmest on record, following a trend.
So having an understanding of that is helping us better understand and look into the future of what the sea ice may be changing with regards to 10, 15, 20, 25, 50 years from now, of how that could change. So it can inform us of how to adapt to these changes that may be coming.
The youth take turns looking through the microscopes, wrapping a week at the same places researchers end their projects.
It's been amazing. I loved every moment. I don't want to go back.
For Sam, this has been a week of learning about concerns and solutions.
I like how everyone else kind of seems to care just as much, if not more, about the environment.
I'm hopeful because the work that we're doing is going to help us inform the future, what the future could potentially look like and how we can potentially adapt to that. I'm hopeful that we will have more people coming up, more Inuit youth coming up to say, I'm going to do this. I don't need a Southern researcher coming up. I'm hopeful that we will have the labs right here in Nunatsiavut. I can see that coming. And I think that in the future, it will happen. It got to happen.
But no matter what, Pamek says Inuit will be here.
I'm going to make sure that no matter what happens, I'm able to live on the coast and make sure I'm happy.
Inuit have been resilient for immemorial. We had to have been, because I mean, just look at where we live. We live in some of the harshest environment in the world. So we have to be resilient and we have to be able to adapt to that. And that has, in some way, shape, or form, followed us through generations. And we are very, very resilient in being where we are today. We got here, we are staying here. You can't take that away.
From Nain and Nunatsiavut, I'm Heidi Adder.
Kids in Yellowknife learned how to play para-hockey this week alongside a Paralympian. Para-hockey was once called sledge hockey. Players sit in a sledge and balance on 2 blades to move around the ice. Not an easy task, as some students at NJ McPherson School found out. Take a look.
My name is Paul Rosen. I lost my leg when I was 39 years old and had the honor of playing goal for Canada for 10 years. I want anybody who's able-bodied to see and appreciate disability and find the ability in it. And I want anybody who is disabled to realize they can do anything and never give up and achieve their dreams.
One of the big things about para hockey, more than any other sport, is a totally inclusive program. When you put somebody in a sledge, you level the playing field. So it doesn't really matter a lot if you have a disability or you don't have a disability.
I know some people are like, oh, keep it for people who have disabilities, I've heard. But I think everyone should come and try it, and if they like it, great, like, play. It's for everyone.
There often are not enough people with disabilities that would be able to create teams or create leagues. So by having your friend come out and hop in a sled with you, your brother, your sister, your mother, be able to come out with you and play, it kind of gives you that experience that you're working together, you're seeing how it might be harder for someone to get into a sled, but when you're in it, the abilities are the same. And it allows a league and a team to grow.
It's inspirational because some people who try it doing it the first time and seeing other people do it who did it before is inspiring, and it also might inspire people who love hockey but aren't able to skate anymore.
It feels good because everyone should be able to follow their dreams. It's a little hard, but once you get used to it and the hang of it, it's pretty fun.
The most important, I think, is I want anybody, no matter what age, to look at people and look at them for who they are, not the way they look.
Just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? Like, try it once, and if you don't like it, maybe it's not for you, but it still might be for you. Like, just give it a try.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here.
Shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Stream anytime. CBC News.
What's it like working and living on a ranch? The only way to survive is to have passion and perseverance. And in my day, we called that true grit.
Priced beef now available at Garland Foods. If he wants a war, he's got one.
I wanted to make dinner for you on Saturday.
Are you as good in the kitchen as you are on the dance floor? It doesn't mean living like you're running out of time. It means living in a place of hope.
Join me for Commotion, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.